The Sacramento Kings got absolutely pantsed last night at home. But we've got other things to talk about, too, as we do each and every Thursday at 8 a.m. with the Athletics' own Sam Amick. Sam, Jason's off this week. It's just you and I, buddy. Good morning.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
You know, I'm healthy now. Got over whatever. Christmas is coming up. Things are good. Okay, but as a Kings fan and as a show host on the flagship station of the Kings, I have been better. Were you at the game last night, perchance?
Funny you should ask. First of all, I was bracing for, like, I know this is for the YouTube crowd, but
it's coming.
Okay, fair enough. I'll let
coming. Don't think I didn't notice. Sam is referring to the fact that he has been relegated to the garage. I can see there's a white fan in the background, and by that I mean a plug-in fan, not me out at the Kings game. There's all kinds of garages. I believe that looks like a is that a cycle or something with some cop? There it is. Why are you relegated to the garage, Sam?
We have family in town that is sleeping in my office at the moment. In fact, the elliptical behind me that you like to poke fun at about how dusty it is, I even had to move that in the garage to create space. So, different digs today. You see I got the sweatshirt on with the jacket because it's a little chilly out here.
I love real life. I love it when real life, everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time. Even nationally renowned NBA writers who get booted because family's in town, and now you're bundled up doing hits in front of the elliptical machine. I love it.
It's pretty good. All right. So back to your question, although it actually ties in. Mm-hmm. Was I at the game? I was game like proximate. I was close. We were actually messing around downtown with the family, doing kind of Sacramento things, having a good time. So I did not partake. I actually watched most of it from home because we got back around 7:30. To me, this Kings team, it's funny, as I was getting ready for us to chat, I'm thinking to myself that, the goalpost has obviously moved in terms of expectations. And you see when they're 16-10, it's like, hey, best start to the season since, 04-05. The history provides such a kind of low bar context, if that makes sense. But now the bar is higher. So it's just not a good night for the squad. No Jason Tatum, and you still get boat raced by the Celtics. Porzingis had his way. Jaylen Brown looked like an MVP candidate. Yeah. Derek White had a great night. So it is weird, with this team. You look at the record, this Kings team, and it's by and large pretty good. And then they just have this terrible habit of really getting blown out way too often.
Yeah, a home loss to go to Vegas by the Pelicans, which was their third blowout loss. Well, second blowout loss to the Pelicans, third loss overall of the year. Got blown out on their home floor by the Clippers after that emotional win over the Warriors, where they had to come back from, I think, 24 down to win that one. The two blowouts in Houston. They're just – but then – Sam, I caught myself earlier saying it just looks like this is a team that is – underneath the ceiling of elites, that they're in that second tier of also rans that aren't there yet, but they're 1-0 against the Timberwolves. They're 2-0 against the Thunder. They're 2-0 against the Lakers. They beat the defending champions. So it really is kind of a bit of a two-face with this team.
It is. There's some context that, I think.
Sure.
Tell me if I get it wrong. Defending champions with no Jamal Murray. Is
Correct.
That right?
Correct.
There was another one in there where it was this. They beat Phoenix, but I think it was just Devin Booker. Or
no Beal, no Durant. You're correct.
So they're talented and they're so explosive offensively that if they've got it going, they can run anybody else off the floor too. It's the games where you're in the mud. I know that's a cliche, but it's true. They were in this game going into the third quarter, and the first 4 minutes of the second half were ugly, and then it's a wrap, and that's where You see kind of the fight and really the stuff that Mike Brown came into the season wanting them to get better at. Those are playoff type of games. Now, the first thing you got to do is make sure you get in the playoffs. They're 5th in the West right now, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But those are playoff type of games that you got to find a way to, if not win, at least feel like you were, in it till the end.
I'm doing some quick math here. I think 70. What is it? 70 to, what is it? 53. They got completely outscored in the second half. You are correct. It was 74 to 66 going into the third. And that's on top of the fact that the Kings opened up with a 12-point lead, and De'Aaron Fox on his birthday had 17 points in the first half. And it does lead to one thing, Sam.
Wait, Dave, didn't he have 26?
26 overall?
No, 26 in the first half.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say? I apologize. He had 17 in the first quarter. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
and he finished with 26 in the first half, 29 to finish the game, which means 3 points in the second half. And
good math, by the way.
Thank you for that. We're all on the fly. It does beg the question. We focus on players, we focus on box scores, but do we also have a problem where the coaching staff, the defending coaching staff of the year, are they getting out coached when it comes to adjustments in these games?
Interesting question. Of course, sometimes they are.
Yeah.
Optionality, I think, is where, not to sound defensive for the coaching staff, but I think it is roster wise where you just see some of these matchups. Like, what are you supposed to do with Porzingis? Like, who on this team is going to deal with Porzingis? I think third quarter there was that play where, Kevin Huerter, who to his credit is a bit scrappier of a defender than people give him credit for.
Agreed.
Kevin winds up on Porzingis and he's around the nail and gives it everything he's got to contest and ends up, hitting Porzingis on the hand, getting the whistle for the foul. But what struck me was like, my God, Kevin was stretching out every absolute centimeter of his frame. And he still couldn't get up to the ball. And that was obviously on a rotation. But those type of matchups, you go back to New Orleans, Jonas Valanciunas, Sabonis is an incredibly physical big.
Ivica Zubac.
Absolutely. Zubac looking, like Hakeem at times.
Yeah.
That seems to be a theme, and it's tricky. I don't know what direction you want to go, but if you naturally this time of year, spin it forward to the trade deadline and things that teams may or may not do, I personally have not been able to really find that kind of perfect candidate for this team that would look great on this roster to fix that particular big problem, because you don't want to take away what Sabonis does. And so there's always this, that's got to be factored in, his playmaking, the spacing, everything he needs. But that problem with certain types of bigs seems pretty consistent.
No, I agree with you. And it was a couple weeks ago. I was talking to somebody who knows Kings things really, really well. Someone who works for the organization or did. And they were making a big pitch that the Kings, I always thought it was you need a wing defender, a 3 or 4. They said ultimately for the Kings to hit their ceiling that they need a 5. They need it's easy to say this, but a Jaren Jackson type, maybe a Brook Lopez type, but they need somebody who can clog the lane down low and free Sabonis up. And then ultimately Domantas Sabonis is a 4 being asked to be a 5, but his limited, not through lack of effort, but his limited defensive capabilities down low are ultimately going to hamper the Kings. Do you think there's something there to the fact that Domantas might be even better as a 4 rather than a 5 for this team?
I feel like I would need to go back and watch a lot of Indiana Pacers tape to answer.
It didn't work with Turner.
That's my point. And it's funny. I actually, when the Pacers were in Vegas, I talked to Miles. You probably saw the story because he gave his opinion that he thought the Pacers won the Sabonis Halliburton trade.
Yeah,
but Miles is happy as a clam now because he wanted to be at the 5, and was moved off at the time, so it didn't work with that combo. And that's where you watch what the Kings do offensively. from a spacing standpoint, where does that big go? You can only run so much pick and roll down the middle, unless that's a stretch five, which is pretty tough to find. I don't know. It's a tricky fit because again, Sabonis is so important for what they do. I don't know what other names might come to mind, but I think you got to be careful with it.
Sam Amick of The Athletic joining us. Let me digress for a second, then we'll get back into it. You mentioned specifically that Herder play on Porzingis. So you were out and about, but I'm putting you on the spot here. I apologize, but you physically, you saw that play on TV, so I can reference it as far as
that's fine. We were home. We watched most of the game on TV.
Yeah, ask you something about that play. So Herder fouled Porzingis. He got him on the arm. It's a tough call, but he got him. And I know that amongst there's a few calls last night that upset some Kings fans. But by the letter of the law, that was I didn't have a problem with that call. But what I did have a problem with, Sam, and you see this a lot. If you remember right, Herder got Porzingis on the arm, and the ball went through the air. And it hit the ground almost before the refs blew the whistle. And we've had this conversation before philosophically, but is that a thing as somebody who watches 30,000 games a year? Is this a real, actual thing with referees where they will occasionally swallow their whistle pending the outcome of the shot? Because that's what it felt like last night.
I don't know the answer to that. The fan part of my mind says yes, of course, but that's not, I don't think, the part that you're asking to answer the question.
That's true.
The part that has talked to officials about this particular topic will just relay what they claim, which is that people seem to forget that they're humans and their brains only work so quickly, and that it is a processing, delay, if you will. It is making sure you get it right. But it sure, I'm going to go back to the fan part. It sure feels that way a lot, that it's kind of just that thing of, all right, if you got nothing out of this shot, then that's going to be the decision maker tipping point, if you will. And I'm going to go ahead and blow the whistle. But that's not how it should be. But, I do think at times we expect perfection within, 3/10 of a millisecond.
Sure.
Which is tricky too.
Well, it's funny. All you have to do is look at, we talked about this earlier, at the Sacramento Kings, who employ some incredibly experienced. We just talked about it. That staff is coach of the year. And I think they're one out of their last 764 when it comes to challenges. That could be off. And that's just kind of a little microcosm. If you're losing all these challenges, it also, it shows that maybe you need to be better at challenging, but it also kind of shows how good these refs are a little bit too in real time.
Yeah, no, they are pretty incredible. I know. Listen, I never know what to think about that particular part. Like Scott Foster, for example, public enemy number one in a lot of circles, you know?
Yeah.
And then year over year over year, the NBA goes out of its way to tell you, oh, by the way, scores higher than any other official in the league for the most part. Been to more NBA finals. And so it that disconnect, if you will, between the eye test at times and then what the metrics internally with the league are telling you are tricky. You get caught up in optics, you get caught up in personality, and and then your own fandom. So there's a lot to unpack.
It's a funny conversation, Sam, and I love how we this is what happens when Jason isn't here, is that I just don't organize the Chris Paul Scott Foster thing is one of the more fascinating things about this season. Because on any list, if you took a poll amongst fans of most disliked, most annoying, floppiest, drama-iest, instigating pests in the NBA, Chris Paul is going to be at or near the top of the list.
Right.
But it also seemed almost nearly unanimous that NBA fans were siding with Chris Paul in the Chris Paul versus Scott Foster conversation. Now, I don't know anything about Chris's son and the personal stuff in the meeting, so I want to be real careful here. But I do know, in watching the replay of that incident, you had Chris Paul just absolutely ethering Scott Foster, calling him the B word, and you're a B, and this and that, and whatever. And I'm thinking, this guy's not, number one, Chris Paul doesn't appear completely innocent. Number two, how are we all siding with Chris Paul when we don't know what's being said? I just found that juxtaposition of fans very fascinating when it came to that debate.
Now the B word, just to be clear, that's buddy. Buddy.
Yeah, I kept calling him buddy. Hey,
right.
buddy. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you can say that on the radio. Just say
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty funny. Like, I've seen this thing up close for a long time. I probably told you on the show before that one of the stranger, more entertaining parts of covering the bubble back in Orlando was, having the referees become part of your daily life, and Scott Foster himself teaching me how to play pickleball. So I have this like different thing with Scott. And then Chris, I've covered forever. Both those guys, if you did a player / referee least liked list, like you already said, they'd be pretty high up there. The stuff with the Sun, I mean, you hear things, I'm probably not going to get into that. But man, it is still like as raw as it was even a couple of weeks ago in terms of that topic. I went to the Warriors game a couple nights ago, and you had Chris Paul in the corner. I don't even know what sparked it. Like, Scott didn't even referee that night, and Chris was in the corner telling more stories about Scott and talking about the situation. And I don't even know what was going on, but he was on his phone showing people stuff. Like, when Adam Silver talked about it in Vegas at the in-season tournament, also talked about it during a media round of interviews. I think he did Sirius XM. Like, I think that might have re-sparked it in both camps, to have the commissioner weigh in and not take sides, but, kind of give
They got to do their jobs is what he said, basically.
Yeah, you got to do their jobs. And, I don't know. It's messy. As Scott, for better or worse, is always going to have that thing hanging over his head. And that, Netflix kind of brought this back into the fore, is that affiliation with Tim Donaghy and the I'm forgetting the name of the documentary.
134 calls. It's right at the top of Foster's Wikipedia page. 134 calls between Donaghy and Scott Foster, more than the 126 Donaghy made to his bookie between October and April. But you know something, and look, I think everything's a scam, and I'm the guy that thinks the ref fix everything. I'm a Kings fan, but those could also be like, what if Foster was like his mentor and was like, hey, good call in that game? Like, I wish there was a recording, but you're right, it does hang over him. It will always hang over him.
It does, and Chris knows that, and that's where I think, that doc kind of opened up a wound and gave some vulnerability that Chris has taken advantage of. And it, I mean, listen, man, it's I don't ever want to be the type that says, oh, I'm sure the NBA sussed it out and there's nothing there.
Sure.
They obviously investigated it greatly, and they continue to claim that there was nothing to see there. Again, the regular guy part of me, like, that's a hell of a call log, so I don't know that we're ever going to have total clarity on that, but point being, to go back to the Chris Paul thing, on a hardwood floor where trash talk is exchanged not only between players, but discourse between players and refs, that is some pretty rich material for somebody like Chris or anybody else to go after. And I think does, make a lot of players look sideways at Scott.
Sam Amick of The Athletic joining us as we head towards the stretch here and wrap
what's
up.
What's on your call log? That's what I want to know. Like, what's the,
Fire wings, marriage counselors.
Okay, easy there.
By
the way, neighbor John offered. He said, "I don't need to be in the garage, and I could have gone to his house. Do you should we do it?
God, no.
Scared from the family room, neighbor John interview.
No, please, no, because you're gonna have him like a Muppet in the background, like those two old guys from the balcony, just berating you the whole time and distracting us. I'm
a little surprised he hasn't been banging on the garage door behind me so far.
I'm a little surprised he hasn't shown up in the text yet. 916-339-1140, neighbor John. I got to ask you about your trade column. That happened. You always do these awesome columns like right after we talk. So tomorrow is probably going to be your extended interview with Monty McNair or something. We wait a week, which is fine. You mentioned Zach LaVine. You mentioned OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam. You and I have both agreed many times this year that it appears that Monty McNair and the team are absolutely looking to make some sort of move. In your opinion, does the emergence of Keegan Murray defensively, and obviously 47 points the other night, does that help or complicate this process for Monty?
I think it helps. Meaning, I think he's not going anywhere. But I think
we thought Tyrese wasn't going anywhere.
That's my point. Right. Like, you could, if you want to be cold blooded about it, you could say, "Oh boy, like what could Keegan Murray get you now?"
Right.
If you want to get one of these deals over the finish line, I just don't. And this is why trade season's always fun, because we will be surprised, like guaranteed.
Yeah.
There's something I don't know that is happening and percolating right now. But I don't know who that guy is. There are years with certain teams when you're like, oh man, they are head over heels for this particular player, and they're going to do whatever they can to get him. I don't see that person right now. Now I did, admittedly, and I was probably a little too soft with it or nuanced with it, but the LaVine stuff, I was admittedly trying to raise, kind of up the decibel level of that conversation with the Kings, just to kind of, see where it goes, if that makes sense. Because when it comes to OG and Pascal, I'm sensing pretty significant reservations relating to the free agency situation.
Yeah.
OG, in particular, you're talking about a guy that, is going to give you 13 and 7, and you're going to maybe have to pay $40 million a year.
That's right.
And Pascal, more dynamic offensive player, not as strong defensively, although strong. So anyway, those two guys seem to be a little lukewarm, and there's other names that that have been thrown about, Lauri Markkanen in Utah. But with Zach, it is a combination of contract control. You do the deal, and it's like with Sabonis, like now you got the guy for an extended period. And then on top of that, and I've been a little surprised to learn this, I feel like the organization's focus, even with the aspirations of being better defensively, are still on the offensive side of the ball and shooting and, being explosive. I mean, Zach LaVine, just as a reminder, the other night when Keegan goes off for 47, has 12 threes, guess who else is on that list of players who have hit that many threes in a game? It's sure. Zach LaVine. That guy can shoot the lights out. He's just not strong defensively, somewhat questionable. And this matters for the Kings within a system offensively, because a lot of times he's an ISO player.
He's a ball dominant player.
Yeah, and the Bulls are 7-3 with him on the shelf, which is not a great look. But there's also only so many talented guys available, and calculated risk is part of this thing. So I don't know that we've unpacked the LaVine stuff that much in the past. Like where do you land on whether or not he would help them?
Where I land on Zach is where I land with a number of these folks. I think you've got Fox and Sabonis max. You're gonna either super max or update Fox's max here pretty soon. Keegan's under control for another 3-4 years, so there's that. You're going to have to pay Monk this summer, and I do believe they're going to pay Monk. He wants to be here. He's been open about that, but I think his salary's probably going to double. You're looking at a 480, 400, something like that, and they're going to start having maneuverability issues. So I believe their next they have one big upgrade left. They have one big move they can make. You add Zach LaVine, who's ball dominant. He's going to score, but you're talking about the best offense in the history of the game last year. And in my opinion, the only reason they're not still this year is because the coaching staff has put a ton of emphasis on defense. I think if they wanted to score like they did last year, I think they would be scoring like they did last year, and they'd have the same issues. I think Mike Brown knows for them to make noise in the playoffs, they're going to learn they need to learn how to play half court defense. They need to learn how to slow down. And they need to learn to commit more on that side. And I think it's like body blows in boxing. It's taking a toll in the later rounds, or will take a toll. Long story short, for me, Zach LaVine's bringing sand to the beach. Lauri Markkanen, to a lesser extent, is bringing sand to the beach. It's got to be, and again, I'm just, forget contract and I'm just throwing the type out there. It's got to be the more offensive Matisse Thybulle, the healthy Ben Simmons, the OG Anunoby who would sign. It's got to. The Kings, in my opinion, have to find their Aaron Gordon. They have to find their Aaron Gordon. I don't think Zach LaVine makes them a championship contender. I think he makes them slightly better, and I think that's your team for this run. That's your team for the next 4 or 5 years, and you're only going to be able to upgrade on the periphery. So a trade like that scares me to death.
Yeah, and I mean, to add on to that, contractually, some of the numbers that you mentioned on Monk, part of me thinks you might end up losing Monk in that deal.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that you can have that pricey of a 6-man while having Fox, and Sabonis's contracts the way they are with Keegan coming up. So,
so Vivek would have to go. And look, I don't want to. This is not Vivek bashing. I've never heard a story of him balking at money, but the Kings are generally 16th to 22nd in salary. You're talking about him going into those pockets quite a bit, and between Fox and Sabonis right now are at like 65 million. Next year, Fox and Sabonis will be at 75 million. If you bring in Zach LaVine, you're adding 43 million. Now all of a sudden you're at 120 basically $1 million between 3 players, and you've got to re-sign Monk, and you've got to fill out a roster. Right. They'd be in cap hell.
Right. Yeah.
So we're agreed, right? No, Zach LaVine.
I think we're agreed. I mean, I think they, again, I would, if the Kings front office would like to text me their entire list of targets, that would be fine.
I agree.
And then we can talk about them and tell them who they should take.
How about they send you? They're not going to want to put the whole list out. So send if you're listening, Monty. First off, nice vest. Secondly,
that's a safe bet right there.
That is a very safe bet, dude. Secondly, he came out yesterday and said his favorite non-Pepsi Coke soda is Dr. Pepper, as opposed to, say, root beer or something else. Agree or disagree with that, Sam?
Totally agree. Huge Dr. Pepper guy.
There's nothing wrong with that. How do you feel about where are you coming down on Mr. Pibb?
I like it. Yeah, I was always okay with that. I'm not exclusive to Dr. Pepper.
Well, that aside, if Monty, if you want to send me half of the prospects, send Sam the better half. He's the national guy, and then Sam, you and I can compare.
I like it.
Sam Amick writes for The Athletic each and every week. He also lives here locally and will always have the best coverage from a national point of view, and in some cases local on your Sacramento Kings. There are deals galore right now, as we talked to you about with Matt Barrows on Monday for The Athletic, as low as $1 a month. You can pay full price like me with my 2 subscriptions, or you can be smart and get it for $12 a year. So, Sam, we're on next week. I'll talk to you off air about what you want to do. But if I don't talk to you before, and I'm sure I will, from the audience to you and Emily and Landon and Ryder and the whole crew and your family taking over your studio, and drunk neighbor John, we love you. Merry Christmas and happy holidays, my friend.
Same to you, buddy. Always enjoy it. We've been doing this a lot of years now. I appreciate you, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas to the family, and maybe next time when I see you, there's not going to be a sheet of metal behind me.
That's a great point right there. Yeah, we go a long way back. Cushy poker player build and everything. So appreciate you.
You look good. No dad bod anymore, man. You're fit.
You haven't seen my belly. That's why I'm wearing puffy black sweatshirts. See you next week, dude. Take care. All right, that's Sam Amick. We'll take a break. When we come back, let's get to it and reset. Are the